Hello and welcome to a new interview from MinnMax. MinnMax is a place about games, friends, and getting better. My name is Ben Hansen. Thank you for clicking on this. This interview is exciting. This is an interview with Jamie Turner from All Possible Futures, and they're making the Plucky Squire, which has showed up in a couple showcases. It's the game that's 2D when you're in the picture book, but then it pops into the 3D world as you're exploring a kid's room over time. You're probably familiar with Jamie's previous work while he was at Game Freak, credited as James Turner, of course, over there at Game Freak, where he was the art director on Pokemon Sword and Shield, but started working there, working on Pokemon Black and White. So there's an incredible viewpoint on the evolution, no pun intended, of Game Freak as a studio, where he was also the director for Harmonite and Tembo the Badass Elephant. So in this interview, we talk about why he decided to leave Game Freak, what it's like building up a new studio to develop the Plucky Squire, the Pokemon he designed in the past, his thoughts on the independent spirit of Game Freak, the right game team size for game development, playing a prototype for the Wii with Shigeru Miyamoto. There's a ton of insight in this interview, and we hope you enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, you can always help support these type of long-form game developer interviews by subscribing to MinnMax's YouTube channel, or you can help support it directly by going to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. If you support us at the $5 tier, you unlock the podcast version of this interview, all of our other interviews, and the bonus podcast feed. And through November 1st, if you support us at any tier on Patreon, you will be sent a Steam code for Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals. So thank you for supporting independent games media, and without further ado, here's Jamie Turner. Jamie, welcome to MinnMax, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, long time coming. Thank you for finally making this happen.
Yeah, I'm glad to be able to do it.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of things, a lot of areas we can get into here. First things first, I have to kiss your ass for your social media feed. Everybody's screaming about Twitter, X, social media, rot your brain, it's terrible. Yours might be one of the greatest of all time, where it just feels like multiple times a week you're sharing an awesome piece of art where it's just Kirby shaking hands with Mario or something. It's just like the greatest feed of all time. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. It always makes me happy when people say that it brings a smile to their face, or like they enjoy looking at it. It's good to hear that.
Yeah. What are you just doing it for fun? Do you think it helps your art skills to just stay in that rotation every day?
Well, Ben, so
please.
There are three good reasons.
That's right.
One is practice. Like, as a creator, I'm making things for people to enjoy, and with a game project, you're doing that over like 3 years. And you're kind of envisioning what people are going to enjoy. And then at the end of it, you release it, and then you find out if they're really going to enjoy it or not. And the cycle of feedback is so prolonged. It's difficult to get like a real kind of idea of what people really enjoy or not. But with like a social feed, you can like release something every couple of days. Yeah. And then you can see if your idea that you thought was funny, other people find funny or not. And it's kind of a way to, it's like exercise, really, exercising your kind of creative muscles. Like, are people going to respond to this? Are they going to find that cute? It's a good way to do that. So that's one thing. Second thing is fun. I just enjoy drawing. And sometimes an entire day might be taken up by like meetings or answering emails. And I don't actually get to draw during the day.
Right.
So I like to kind of wind down by drawing something. So it's fun for me. And then, the third thing is like, if people enjoy it, then that's cool. I like to hear that. It's just a nice thing.
Yeah. Are you big on the feedback angle? I think anybody in your position would be. But I mean, when a game like Pokemon Sword and Shield releases, which you had a huge hand in as the art director, are you scouring every YouTube video and forum to see if anyone's like, I love the art direction in this game?
Well, not scouring, no. Like, if the game is big enough, then like you there's a lot of feedback out there, and you can't help but see it if like you're scrolling through Twitter, X, or whatever. Like, even on Reddit, like you might be looking on Reddit and a thread will come up. So it's not hard to find feedback for a really big game like that. But I don't want to go out of my way to like look through lots of comments or because that way lies madness. Like, you've just got to kind of get a general sense of the temperature of something, and get a feel for what people are responding to, but don't go too deeply into that rabbit hole. Is usually how I I like to do that.
Yeah, that's great. We can turn off the comments for this YouTube video if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
So I think last time I saw you was when I was at Game Informer and I visited Game Freak for the Pokemon Sword and Shield cover story trip, and that would have been 2019. So I'm curious just to get caught up since then, because you've gone through a lot, man. So ship Sword and Shield, how did that feel for you?
Yeah, that was great. That's so exciting. Yeah, I mean, a big title like that, it's interesting. It seems like the whole world is talking about it for that particular point of time.
Yeah.
Like, I guess that reflects the world that I'm plugged into, though. Like, the people that I follow tend to be people who like video games like me. So everyone's talking about the latest. Like, everyone's talking about Super Mario Brothers Wonder at the moment, or like Spider-Man. Like, that's the topic of conversation. And for a period of time, the topic of conversation is something that you've contributed to or, worked on, which is exciting. It's like, it's cool. There's a kind of a celebratory feel, and you're part of it. And yeah, I mean, there are lots of different points of view on what you've released, but there are lots of positive comments and, people being nice. And I tend to get a lot of nice comments.
The people who are digging into your name and the credits are like, okay, if I'm finding the art director for this game, I'm not going to go out of my way to just thrash them for some art decision. It's just they want to compliment you.
Yeah, usually, like, I don't tend to see a lot of negativity or thinking back on that kind of experience, like the thing that I most remember is just people being nice and complimentary, or
after the whole National Dex thing. I understand there's some rough times in that game's development, I have to imagine, in terms of
bumps in the road.
Bumps in the road. I'm looking at it now, and I'm sorry to be so gross like this, but Sword and Shield has sold 26 million copies. I mean, do you see those milestones out there in the news and give a little fist bump? Like, what is it like to work on a game like that?
Yeah. Not specifically the numbers. Like, I remember tracking it a little bit at the beginning because there were headlines about how well it was doing. Yeah. So hard not to see that. And yeah, just adding to the excitement. Like, wow, a lot of people are buying this game, and a lot of people are seeing what we've done. And yeah, it's just the kind of an energy about it. As a creator, to have lots and lots of people enjoying and experiencing what you've done, it's really cool.
That's horrifying. So what? Cool and horrifying. So what is your journey like after that then? When did you make the decision to leave Game Freak? What era was that? Yeah.
Well, that was during Sword and Shield, I decided.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah, it's difficult
to remember. The DLC maybe, or?
What's that?
Was it the DLC?
Yeah, no, it must have been after Sword and Shield and during Scarlet and Violet, I guess. Or just before Scarlet and Violet began, I believe.
Okay. So does that overlap with, why am I forgetting the name? Jesus, the same year as Scarlet and Violet. Help me out.
Oh, Arceus.
Yes, Pokemon Legends Arceus.
Yeah.
Was that in that same era? Did you touch that game at all?
I didn't touch it, but I was kind of like, gave my opinion about it and had meetings about it. And
okay.
Yeah. So not deeply involved, just at a removed position.
So you were seeing Scarlet and Violet on the horizon. They're starting to assign roles, and that's when you said, "All right, I'm out."
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Like, just kind of getting into pre-production, and yeah, that was the phase where if I don't make a move soon, it just keeps rolling on, and then it's the next one, and it's the next one, and then I'm 70 years old, and like it's the end of my life. And I like making my own things. Even in Game Freak, that was something that I really enjoyed. So like Harmonite was a game that I made while I was in Game Freak, and Tembo the Badass Elephant was another game that I made. That was like, I spent half my time, it feels like, making original things, and then half the time making Pokemon things. And so I've always had a passion for making original things, and I thought, this is a really big leap, but if I don't do it now, then it's just gonna, when will I do it? Like 10 years later, 20 years later. So Sword and Shield was a great experience for me, and like to be able to create a game based around the UK as a Brit, that was a really cool thing to do. Art director on a Pokemon game, something that I always wanted to do.
Of course, I
got to do it. And then I thought, okay, so what do I do next? Do I keep doing it? Or do I do something different? I just felt like doing something different.
Yeah, you didn't have any goals in your mind of directing a mainline Pokemon game?
No, I think that would be difficult.
Omori looks stressed. Is that the idea?
Omori never looks stressed. He's very calm and in control.
Impeccable.
Yeah. No, it's just that would require a whole different kind of skill set. I haven't really actually considered that before.
Sure.
It's just not something that I would naturally think would be a fit for me. Something more, directing a game would be, something more I have created is my kind of wheelhouse. I like coming up with an idea and then seeing that through, like inventing what the game system will be about, what the story will be about, and then not at a massive scale either, like keeping it kind of quite small or medium sized and focused and getting it done. That's kind of my wheelhouse. Like directing a Pokemon game would be a massive machine.
Oh my God. I mean, you know it well than everybody. It's a technical machine. I mean, the idea of, it's still remarkable to me that Game Freak even allowed for these smaller projects to exist. I think most other studios on Earth, if they have a franchise as big as Pokemon that's selling 26 million copies, it's all hands on deck. So it's still remarkable that even at a big company like that, relatively big company like Game Freak, you still could carve out time for Harmonite and Tembo. And I mean, the Game Freak always has that experimental edge. It's really wild to look at. Yeah,
well, the clue is in the name. Like they're people that love games, and it started off as a zine, right? Like a game magazine, and that kind of spirit of creativity and just loving games. Like so many games, everyone's kind of a game fan, and everyone's talking about the latest release in the studio and sharing thoughts about like what they're enjoying about certain games, or like playing games, get people getting together and playing games and commenting about it in the lunch breaks, that kind of thing. I think that passion has always been a part of Game Freak and continues to be. And so it's cool. And it's really awesome that like a big company like Game Freak could give younger creators like a chance to do their own thing, like pitch their own projects. And then if people like it, then, allow them to have a budget and setting time aside for them. And,
Cool. So it's like an internal pitch process of like, hey, anybody in the company can pitch a game, or once you reach a certain threshold, then you can pitch a game for the entire company?
Anyone, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that's how stuff like Little Town Hero and stuff comes to be.
Yeah.
That's incredible that they're carving out that much time for it. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so you decided to step away. Was it a clean break, or were you still like helping out with some things here and there as you started to ramp up for your own studio?
Being in quite a responsible position, I don't just want to say, bye guys. So sure. I let people know that I was leaving, and then kind of spent some time like making sure that I passed the baton on, so it would kind of be smooth after I left.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, keeping in touch with them, like talking to them. Yeah, like I not completely cut ties, still in contact. And yeah, I mean, a lot of them are my friends. So
Sure.
just keeping in contact as friends. And yeah, I think I'll always kind of be keeping in contact with them and checking in.
Yeah. But you were also moving back to England?
Yeah, that's right. So I moved back to England.
Nice.
And yes, that's right. That's where I am right now.
When did you make that leap?
That was the leap of leaving Game Freak, was also the leap of leaving Japan and starting my own company with my business partner,
Okay.
my creative partner.
Yeah. Are you a hero in England for pioneering the Galar region in Pokemon? Do people high five you on the street like, yeah, you got England in Pokemon?
That hasn't happened yet.
Come on. What is going on over there? Give this man some credit.
Yeah, it's a shame.
So I'm curious about, all possible futures, the new studio. Did you always know you wanted to start it with Jonathan Biddle? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah, that's it. Jonathan Biddle, or Bits, aka Bits. Everyone calls him Bits.
Bits.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah. When I first started in the games industry, that was like a long time ago, like the early 2000s. My first job was in a London studio. His first job was in the same studio. And we got on really well, like really good friends. And we kind of worked on some original projects in that studio. And we thought, well, this is cool. We want to make something together. But I went on holiday in Japan. And while I was in holiday, I sent my portfolio out. And Genius Sonority were interested in my work. And so I ended up having an interview during my holiday with Genius Sonority, and they hired me. And so I was still working at Blue 52, but then suddenly, like the next month, it was time to move to Japan. And so I said goodbye to Blue 52, said goodbye to Bids, but we always kept in contact while I kicked off a career in Japan. Like I was working there for 18 years, and Bids, he went on to found a studio called Curve. He was one of the directors at Curve Digital, and they work on indie games, publishing indie games. So he got a lot of experience there, and he hooked up with Devolver, got to know Devolver, and then he left that and started a company called One Bit Beyond, who made the Swords of Ditto, which was like a Zelda kind of game.
Yeah.
I actually helped out a bit with the art of that, like the kind of cartoon aesthetic of that.
Oh, that's interesting. So kind of just discussing some art direction stuff, or a little more hands-on than that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then by that time I was in Game Freak, and then I was thinking, like, what do I want to do for the rest of my career? Like, is there anything that I haven't done yet that I want to do? And yeah, starting a company, making original games, like fully original games from scratch, sounded like a really fun thing to do. And it was something that I talked to Bids about for a long time. And then finally it felt like the time was right for him and for me. And so, yeah, we both made the leap and we set up the company, and then we thought about what kind of game we wanted to make.
That sounds so fun, just to have this friend in the industry that you're keeping tabs on each other and just being amazed at the amount of experience you're getting. Like, I mean, going to Genius Sonority, like you're working on like Pokemon Gale of Darkness, all those offshoot Pokemon games. I'd imagine at that point, Bits is like, oh my gosh, you're getting so much experience. And meanwhile, he's just building up his indie cred. So by the time you reform here, you can get out of the gate so strong. It's awesome.
Yeah. We leveled up, I guess, over the years. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like all of that experience is a good thing to have behind us. Like we're kind of comfortable, at least, yeah, definitely creatively. From a creative point of view, we know what we like and what we think works and doesn't work. So yeah, it feels quite like a reliable kind of system of thinking about things. Like if he likes it, he likes my idea, then I know it's probably good. And if I like his idea, we know that we've probably got something. And so it's kind of like trusting each other because we've got so much experience.
Yeah. And I mean, after he's worked on Swords of Ditto and you at least were close to Swords of Ditto, like having a game that seems like it's taking some inspiration from a lot of Nintendo stuff, but specifically the Zelda series. It's like, okay, you have your tastes honed. You know exactly what type of game you want to make with the Plucky Squire here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Congratulations on the announcement trailer for Plucky Squire, and I guess the entire game as well. I haven't played it yet, but like just having an indie game where the initial trailer pops that well and it makes people's heads turn. Like, I mean, Cuphead was a big one. I think since Cuphead's reveal trailer, I think Plucky Squire is top 3, at least for an indie game where people go like, wait, what is this? That looks so damn good. If you've never seen it, just listening to the audio version, you definitely check out a trailer for Plucky Squire. So is this a 2-person team? What's going on over there?
No, we've got it was a first. Yeah. At first, when we first kicked stuff off, it was just Bids and I thinking of ideas. And then we got a couple more people on board. And then now we've expanded. I think it's about 20 people.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, a whole bunch of talented people making it all happen. So like animators. So I draw the characters, like the character designs, and then we have animators bringing those to life, which is awesome to see. And then we have like background artists making like all the environments. And the weird thing about the game is that it's 2 games in one, or 20 games in one, however you want to look at it. Like we have a whole 3D world, and then we have a 2D world in the book. So we have a team of 3D people making the desk all look amazing, like 3D environment artists and lighting artists, animators, effects artists, and then of course like the programmers and the designers, like making it all work, like and making it fun. So, and then music, sound. It's a lot of people all working together.
Do they kind of feel like separate teams in the same studio, like the 3D people and the 2D people, and they're kind of just passing the torch back and forth for whenever Jot is jumping between it in a certain area?
Yeah, well, we're all working in parallel, but basically it's different Slack channels, really. It's like we've got the 3D Slack channel, we've got the 2D Slack channel, and all the discussion about 3D is happening in the 3D Slack channels. All the discussion about 2D is happening in the 2D Slack channels, and then we're kind of shooting the breeze on general channels. But so we're all it all feels like we're all same part of the team, but like, yeah, there are definitely different threads kind of ongoing.
That sounds incredibly challenging. You're making this in Unreal. I mean, it all looks so smooth. It's shocking.
Yeah. It's in Unreal. And yeah, it is like the first thing that we ever tested was getting the 2D character running around and then jumping out of the book into the 3D world. That's the kind of core of the idea. And so that's what we wanted to get working straight away. So that was the first demo that we did. And once we got that working, then we knew, well, okay, if we've done that, then the rest of it will should fall into place. Because that technology for jumping out of the book is also the technology that you use to jump into mugs or like different posters in the outside world. There are lots of different kind of things like that when you're adventuring outside in the 3D world. So, but the core mechanic is that jumping from 2D to 3D. And once we got that done, then we knew that we could probably get the rest of the game working.
Jeez, but it looks like there's so much variety. Like every trailer you've released, you're packing in so many different ideas. How? Is it a shorter game experience, or are you all just flying with the variety here? Can you walk us through how that's possible, just to have so many different concepts packed into this thing?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of work.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. A lot of things to look at and take care of and polish and think about. So I guess one thing is that we have a shorthand for like the kind of games that we enjoy, and this game should be more like a side-scrolling beat 'em up kind of thing, or this should be like a side-scrolling shooter kind of thing. And then we have reference points that we, as gamers, we kind of dig, and then we know, well, this worked in this particular game, so let's do it kind of like that. That's a kind of a shortcut that we can use. And then Bids is really good at putting stuff together and kind of prototyping it and making it play nicely. So I think that's his happy place as well, just like putting stuff like that together. And once he puts it together, like the art may be rough, but you have a kind of a general idea of how it plays. And then it's a case of animating, putting in the characters, putting in the backgrounds, getting it all looking nice. But it's a lot to look after, and it's a lot to polish. And the game is not particularly short. It's not like an hour game or 2 hour game, 3 hour game. It's more than that. It's quite a big chunk of gameplay. So it's just a lot of work. That's
the
what
secret.
it comes down to.
You think, we're talking around 10 hours? I know it's tough to put an exact number on it, but.
No, not around 10 hours. It's like, I would say, maybe like 5 hours, something like that.
Perfect. That seems great. I assume it's at a place where you can play through the entire thing now. Like, what state is the game in today? As of today, you can pretty much play through the whole thing. Yeah, that was the point of our recent efforts to try and get everything all connected together and playable. Yeah.
That's where we're at the moment.
Here's an impossible question. What do you think of it after playing through the entire thing?
Yeah. Like, pretty happy. It's solid.
Solid.
Like, yeah. You at this stage, which is good, really good, because you never know. You could get it all together and it could be like, oh shit, like this doesn't work or that doesn't work or what are we going to do about that?
Right.
But at this particular point, it feels like solid. There's nothing screaming at us like this is not working out. And now it's a case of like bringing it together, polishing it, making sure it's easy to understand and fun to play. But like the base feels pretty like a solid foundation.
Yeah, right on. Was it as fun as we all like to imagine to come up with the idea for what game you're going to make with your buddy after you finally reunite in the industry? I mean, what were those pitch sessions like?
Yeah, it was really fun. That's like one of the most fun parts of any of this process, like the purely creative bit at the beginning where you're thinking about what kind of ideas you might want to make. At first, we were making a completely different game. It was a 3D combat game, like a science fiction, futuristic combat game was what we were making at the very beginning.
It's like a brawler type thing?
Yeah, with a sword. So kind of like a sword-based combat game. Yeah. And that was cool. We liked it. But no one else seemed to like it as much as we liked it.
That's telling. Okay.
Yeah, which was a shame. But it was good because then it took us back to the drawing board and got us thinking about, okay, so people are not quite responding to this as much as well as we'd like. Let's think of an idea that will grab people's attention. And I think we started off with the idea of like making a game we would want to make, and that was the main idea there. But then it became a case of making a game we would want to make, but also making a game that would get people excited.
Right.
And like maybe that'd be more of a high concept kind of a thing.
I mean, that goes back to having a trailer that pops, I guess. Cause,
exactly. Yeah.
You can have a sci-fi sword game, but it's like, we've seen a lot of those. And even though you're feeling like it's your baby because you're so passionate about it, if it's not popping, that's probably a sign of, the maturity of the studio leads, that you two can work on that sword project for so long. They'd be like, all right, you know what? The proof's in the pudding. Like, if it's not clicking with people, it's not clicking. Let's reset.
Yeah, that's literally exactly what happened. We'd spent like a few months on it actually, and we were really happy with it. I still like it. Seeing videos of it from time to time, it's like, oh, that was cool. Like, we should probably work on that again at some point. But yeah, like there's a fork in the road. Do you continue like pushing this boulder uphill, trying to get other people excited in it, or do you come up with a new boulder or stretching the analogy, or a new
it.
hill. We came up with a new boulder, which was the idea of the Plucky Squire.
Yeah.
And that got people excited, like immediately. People were really into the idea. And Devolver were really into the idea. And then it was more like pushing a boulder downhill rather than trying to push it up a hill. It was like momentum behind it because people were really into it.
Yeah. Was Devolver already funding the original game?
Not funding, no.
Okay.
We were kind of making a demo by ourselves. And then we took it to Devolver to show them. And they were like, yeah, it's kind of cool, but pass. Like, maybe not.
Yeah.
So, and then it was like, okay, do we take it to other people? Because we liked Devolver, and Bids had worked with Devolver. So you could imagine taking that same game to other publishers and seeing what they thought, or maybe changing things a bit, trying to, make it more appealing or more novel looking.
Yeah.
Or, well, we've got the time, and it's always fun to brainstorm. Let's have a think, and can we come up with anything else that is more novel or more eye-catching or more interesting? So that's what we did. It doesn't cost a lot to think for a few days about ideas, and you never know, something cool might pop up, right? So
yeah.
That's what we did.
Was it like a whiteboard situation? Was it you two just over a Zoom call here talking about 1,000 different game ideas?
Yeah. Well, no, it was it was a Zoom call. That's what it was. But the inception of the idea was in a park, I remember. And literally speaking, I was in a park trying to think of ideas, kind of daydreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is another good thing about social feed artwork, because I kind of developed a artwork style.
Yeah.
The stuff that I post on Instagram or X. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool to do a game in that kind of art style? And so I was kind of daydreaming about that and thinking, what could that be? And that art style is quite simplistic and looks kind of like the illustrations you might see in a kid's book. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if you could play through like a picture book, if those pictures were actually moving around inside a book? And that's how the idea started. So I thought, okay, a storybook, that would be cool. And then I drew up a few pictures, and like one of the first ones I drew was once upon a time there was a Plucky Squire. And so it was always about that character. And then, so I kind of had that in the back pocket and a few other ideas. And then the combat game didn't generate the right kind of excitement. And then it was like, okay, let's think about new ideas.
Yeah.
And then we had a Zoom call and we kind of batted ideas around. And this was one of the ideas that we talked about, and Bids was immediately excited about the idea. And so we started brainstorming within that meeting, like, okay, what would be even cooler is if like the character could jump out of the book and run around the desk.
Perfect.
And because we'd been making the combat game in Unreal, we had the Unreal know-how. And so that was it. It's like we were super excited in the meeting, and then it was like the next step is, okay, let's try and make this work. We've got Unreal. We've been in demo mode for the last 3 months. Let's keep that rolling. Let's make a demo of this. And we know that we have Devolver's contact details.
Right.
And we have their ear. So like, let's try and make something, show it to them, see what they think. And then, so that's how we kick things off.
Yeah. If you went from that idea of like, all right, let's make the picture book game, and then jumped forward in time to playing the game as it is now, what do you think would be the biggest surprise for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. I think, well, from the very initial idea, I wasn't quite expecting it to go this 3D. I was imagining that you'd be inside a book and you'd be able to do things like turn the corner of the book to find like a secret on the corner of the book, or maybe turn the pages, go into the margins, that kind of thing. But I wasn't imagining that we'd be running around on a 3D desk and combating enemies on a 3D desk and jetpacking over things. I think the extent of the 3D is the thing that would surprise me the most. And then like the particular mechanics, we didn't have those in place at the beginning, like word puzzles, the idea of putting words into sentences, and then the sentences changed the reality of the book. That wasn't a thought in our minds at that point. So that would be kind of a nice surprise to see. Oh, it's quite a good idea. Well done for coming up with that.
Yeah, so you're just kind of following the fun and realize like, oh, you can have more fun and more variety in the 3D world. Let's try and build up that percentage-wise.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. It's like we kind of think of the 3D sections as expeditions. Like your home is the book. That's your base reality. And then you can jump out of that into this strange kind of foreign environment. But you've always got kind of a mission, like go retrieve this thing.
Okay.
So it's really like an expedition. It's like a detour from the main gameplay. And in that way, it keeps it exciting, always exciting. Like, and every time you jump out of the book to go on one of these expeditions, like the desk environment has changed around. So you know that there's going to be some new layout for you to explore and some new media that you can jump into. Either that's going to be a mug or like a poster, or the idea is in this world, the inhabitant of the room is a young boy called Sam, and he covers his desk and his furniture with strips of tape that he's drawn upon. And so you can jump into these strips of tape or these like sticky notes, and run around in his drawings. And that's a way to kind of transport you from point A to B. Originally, we had it more of a kind of a classic 3D thing where you're climbing up things, and that's cool. But since our kind of unique mechanic is the idea of jumping between 2D and 3D, we thought it'd be good to keep that going on the desk. And this is a way to do that, to have these kind of small pockets of gameplay where you can jump into something, travel through a 2D space, and then come out into 3D and continue on your way.
Yeah. How, I'm sure you get this question all the time, so I apologize, but how soon did the comparison to Link Between Worlds come into play?
Well, I think that we must have talked about it a little bit, because when you're making something, you realize that, oh, okay, so it's kind of like this. There are examples of games that have done this kind of thing before. So we would have made that comparison early on. And then I guess after that, it would be when we showed it to the world with the first trailer. Like you get a lot of, like a lot of people are always very keen to say, oh, it's like this plus this.
Right.
That's the game. So a lot of those kind of comments of what it reminded people of. We got It Takes Two a lot as well.
Yeah, what do you think of that comparison?
Yeah, I mean, it's flattering. It Takes Two is great, but I don't believe that It Takes Two had been revealed when we kicked off the project, actually.
Okay,
or we were not aware of it, but it definitely kind of taking place in the same space, that those tiny characters in a big world kind of a thing.
And also, I guess It Takes Two also blew my mind with the amount of variety they packed into that as a platformer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Great game. So lovely comparison.
Yeah. It's fun to see you pack in so much Nintendo love into this after being associated with Nintendo for so many years. Did you interact much with kind of the old timers at Nintendo, or is it pretty separate over at Game Freak?
Well, more in Genius Sonority, maybe. Yeah, because they were a Nintendo. They are, I think, a Nintendo, partially Nintendo-owned company. Okay. And so I got to meet Iwata-san and Miyamoto-san, and for Harmon, I did an Iwata Asks with Iwata-san, which is cool. Oh my god! Yeah, it was really fun, and I really liked him. He was a cool guy. Every time I met him, he was just really good to talk to and interested. Like he's the head of this, one of the biggest companies and one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world, but he's like yeah, you could tell his curiosity and his kind of interest in whatever project you're working on. Just really nice to talk to.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, he can focus on a downloadable 3DS game and still give it his all, you felt like, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Was it weird reading the Iwata Asks transcript after? Did they cut a lot of stuff out of those, or is it weird to read those and be like, he didn't laugh that much?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of like in brackets laughing and that kind of thing.
It's his main thing.
Yeah. No, I don't think it was pretty accurate to what we talked about, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, nothing too, wild from,
Yeah.
nothing wildly different from what we talked about.
Yeah. What about Miyamoto? Remember the first time you met him?
Yeah, he came to Genius Sonority and visited the office, and I was really into Pikmin at the time. And so I told him, and he seemed happy about that. And just friendly, cool. Like, meeting one of your heroes is always a cool thing, right?
Yeah.
So that was really good. I met him a couple of times after that, a couple of meetings. It's interesting because you're kind of talking shop, you're talking business, or talking about work, but it's also with this person who's been like a creative idol of yours since you were a kid. It's kind of a weird feeling, these two different modes going on at the same time.
Yeah. What type of thing would Miyamoto come to the studio for? He would just check in on like the development of Gale of Darkness or something and give a thumbs up, or would he be talking about other stuff?
Yeah, it must have been about either it was XD or it was Colosseum. I can't quite place when that would have been. And I don't know, I wasn't really party to the meeting in that case because I think I was an effects artist or something like that at that time. So he would have been talking to Yamana-san, who is the head of Genius Sonority. So I wasn't much in those discussions, but I would imagine it would be talking about the project as a whole. And yeah,
and this is kind of the build up to the Wii launch, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. You got a cool early look at that, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Really exciting. Yeah. It was a really cool, because no one knew what it was about, but it was, one of those legendary things that is a source of great speculation at the time. So many rumors about what it was, like this new way of like interacting with a games console, lots of rumors and what could it be? And then we got to see it. And so it felt really exciting to get to see it.
Yeah. What is that like? Is it wheeled in on a cart and they just pull a blanket off it? What is the big reveal when you're actually working on the Wii for the developers?
Well, no, we went there. We went to Nintendo.
Okay.
And, they showed us it in Nintendo, which was cool. Miyamoto-san actually showed it to us, which was a really cool and kind of surreal event. Yeah.
And it's got to be so early that he's like gauging your feedback, like handing you the Wii note, like, all right, let's see how you're going to hold it, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think it was to give us an idea of what it was and also to get our impressions and like our feedback on what we thought about it.
Yeah. Do you remember like what the demo was or the game that you were playing the first time?
It was like really early kind of tech demos. So like basic kind of interactions with stuff on the screen. I can't remember like a fully formed game. It was kind of very demo-esque.
I mean, you have to go home and just cry yourself to sleep after that. Like, oh my God, Miyamoto showed me the next Nintendo console. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That was a really cool moment for sure.
Oh my God.
An exciting moment in the career.
Yeah. Looking at, I don't know. I'm glad you don't dig around too much online because it is an interesting thing, like, on the Pokemon Bulbapedia thing, trying to break down like, okay, here's all of the Pokemon that James Turner designed. I mean, I know you said in the past that like, if you look at the art books, it's pretty clear that the descriptions that are in English are the ones that you wrote. So maybe it's easier than people think to figure out who designed which Pokemon.
Yeah.
Okay. But even like Shadow Lugia from Gale of Darkness, like that was your design?
Yeah, kind of. It was more like a collaboration. So the art director, Hiromoto-san, originally, okay, so there's an idea of what it would be about. And then I think Hiromoto-san drew some imagery, and then I kind of brought it together and kind of finalized it, like what the colors would be and what the final look would be. So yeah, that was the first experience I had of designing.
Oh, that's wild. And then you did so well at Genius Sonority, then you were brought over to Game Freak. Is that the way it worked? Was it kind of like a pipeline where some people were like, all right, you've graduated, now you can work on a mainline Pokemon game over at Game Freak?
No, that was
not at all.
No. I left Genius Sonority and then was looking for another job, and then just applied to Game Freak, and they liked my stuff and took it from there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, at Game Informer, we did an interview with you where you were drawing. I don't know if you remember this. You drew like a Vanillite, kind of walked through your process. And you talked about how at your job interview at Game Freak, you had to design a Pokemon on the spot?
Yeah.
That sounds so hard.
Yeah, it's quite a pressurized thing. Like, but at the same time, you just got to give it your best. Just try it. Like, Ben, design a Pokemon right now. I'll give you a piece of paper and a pen.
Okay, Ice Tiger.
Ice Tiger.
Okay, that's the starting point. Let's see where we go from there.
Yeah, just try it. Like, what? You just got to give it your best, right? So it's quite a bit of pressure, but yeah, just give it a shot. See what happens.
And you're like coming up with the backstory, like a D&D campaign or something, where you're like, oh, this guy, you wouldn't believe how angry he is all the time. Are you walking through that type of stuff as you're drawing it?
No, not really. Just riding on instinct. You don't have that much time, so just just kind of going with your gut instinct and sketching, like not overthinking it too much. Yeah.
So yeah, in that interview, you mentioned that you kind of drew a sketch of like a ghost tree, and then eventually that became Phantom. But this was like just the genesis of the entire thing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It must have stuck in my head.
Yeah. Oh, because it was years and years later where you're like, oh, some sort of ghost tree. Oh, wait, I drew that on my interview.
Yeah.
Do you still have that sketch?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, no.
Oh,
that's somewhere in a filing cabinet, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I was amazed visiting Game Freak. I think it was the first time we visited, that they had like so many old documents and old designs for the Pokemon series. Can you talk about the archiving process? Like when you finish a project like Sword and Shield, you just like hand over all your sketches and assume they're going in a Indiana Jones warehouse?
Yeah, well, like the Indiana Jones warehouse, it's a classified situation. So
okay.
I don't think I can go too much into the process.
But you're feeling good about stuff being preserved, because from what I saw, it was impressive for the amount of stuff they were holding on to.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Okay, that's sweet. Are there any misconceptions about Game Freak that drive you nuts when you see them online? Since you spent so many years there?
No, I don't tend to look into that kind of stuff very much, or get engaged with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's just better all around if you don't heed that kind of thing too much. Like, so no, not really. Nothing that comes to mind.
Okay. I mean, from my point of view, it's always interesting just seeing, people connect the dots of like, okay, Pokemon Sword and Shield is selling 26 million copies. That means that they made this much amount of money. So why aren't they putting that budget into the next Pokemon game and having a team of 2,000 people? And at least for my very, 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 very limited experience visiting Game Freak a couple times, I was always struck by how relatively small the teams were. And it seemed like that was just from Masuda or Game Freak. Overall, the mentality is like, let's keep these teams small because that Pokemon profits is being split up 6 ways to Sunday. And it's not that Game Freak is getting all that cash to develop the next mainline game,
Well, I couldn't talk too much about, I couldn't really talk to the financial details, but yeah, like the team it's hard to gauge. Sometimes I mentioned that the team for the Plucky Squire is like 20 people, and to me that's a tiny team. But then other people are like, that's a huge team. Like that's a lot of people. Like our team is like 4 people. So it's hard to gauge like what is a big team or what is a small team. Like I wonder how many people worked on the latest Spider-Man game.
Oh, I mean, you can look at the credits. I mean, it's got to be. I mean, if you include everybody, it kind of gets messy. I bet it's like 1,000, including like contractors and legal and yada yada yada.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess that is the top limit of a really big team, isn't it? And compared to that, yeah, I don't think it's that big. But like, how many people do you really need to make a game? I guess
that's a great question. I think there's a lot of people in the game industry asking that, and your answer is about 20
at the moment for this one. Yeah.
I mean, because you always hear so many wild stories about, Final Fantasy VI was developed in 10 months with a team of 14 people. It's like Mario 64 was a team of, I think, under 20 people. And I understand it's such a wildly different time, and they probably weren't going home much back in the day. But it is one of those things. It's like, God, there's got to be some more efficient way to get smaller scale games out there.
Yeah, for sure. Like even with Hollywood, when you see like the hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people maybe working on a particular movie, and like the budgets are like $300 million for a movie or something like that. Like that's a huge machine. And these kind of AAA titles are kind of similar to that, I guess. Like,
yeah. Does it freak you out? I mean, as the co-lead of a studio, co-founder of the studio, I don't know how you like to pitch it exactly, but I mean, what is the right size? Do you want to stay around this 20 moving into the future?
Not necessarily, no. Like, I don't think we have any specific ideas about like the amount of people we want in the team. It's more about what we want to make. So, for example, if the Plucky Squire is successful and there's talk of DLC or like further games in the series, that would be really cool. But at the same time, we made this company to make new things. And so maybe we'd want to make a new idea at the same time. And so that would mean like 2 teams possibly. And then like scaling up the Plucky Squire team possibly for like a bigger kind of game. Or so it depends on the type of game that we'd want to make and like how many games we'd want to make at the same time. That would dictate like how many people would be on the project. But I think, we'd be very careful and considerate thinking about like how to be efficient about that. You don't just want to splurge money on something and this seems like an easy way to do it. Let's just hire like 10 people to attack this problem. Or like, is there a more efficient way to do that? Are you being smart about it? That seems like a good way to do things. Don't make things bloated when they don't need to be, because things can get kind of out of control or like impersonal, perhaps, if things get too big. Like it's good to keep like a nice team size so everyone knows everyone else, and it's kind of a fun project to work on. So it would depend on what we were making, and with the kind of guideline in mind that we don't want to get unnecessarily large as a studio. Yeah.
Do you have discussions about the importance of remaining independent? Are you open to the idea of being absorbed into a larger organization in the future here?
Yeah. Well, we're not in any position to think about that at the time being. Like, we'll see how it goes. Like,
sure.
We don't have the luxury of being absorbed right now, but maybe absorption is in our future. It's a possibility. But I guess it depends on like, do we want to cash out and like go live on a yacht somewhere or not?
And you don't?
Well, it's tempting, isn't it? But me and Bids, we're the kind of people that even if we weren't doing this for a living, we'd probably be working on something in our spare time. And we're very much like creativity first, or like making something for the sake of making it and enjoying the process.
Yeah.
And so we have families, and like yeah, the idea of getting to a point where you've got a big company and you're very comfortable. That's obviously, like, for anyone, that would be a cool thing. But on the other side, we're just people who enjoy making things and being creative. And so I think that side will always be tempting to us, and anything that would jeopardize that doesn't feel like something we'd go for. But
Yeah.
call me in 10 years' time when I'm lying on my yacht.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, with a studio that rivals Game Freaks at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
does it? How does it feel? You went from making some of the biggest games in the world to starting your own game studio, and your first game out of the gate looks promising as all hell. Is it as refreshing as we like to imagine it is?
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool. Like, we feel very lucky to have found this idea that people are responding to. And it's a thrill. It's definitely a thrill. Like, it's a real thrill to work on an established franchise that so many people care about and so many people are excited about, like with Pokemon. That's a huge thrill. But then there is something about pioneering and going your own way and creating something from scratch and defining a world. Like, these are the characters that live in this world. This is the story of the world. That is super thrilling as well. And we just feel very lucky that we've come up with this idea, and we've got so many cool, talented people to come on board and work on it. And like, to see it being brought into reality by this team is like, it's such a thrill. And there are difficulties, of course, like coming up with an original game, like challenges and deadlines and technical problems that keep getting kicked up. But there's always a kind of thread of enjoyment and excitement through everything that we're doing. It's never a chore. It's like, it's an exciting thing to be doing and fun, really fun.
Yeah. Does it feel comparable to something like a Harmonite? I mean, does it night and day working in a game within Game Freak compared to doing your own thing?
No, it feels very comparable to Harmonite. It feels like the same thing. Like, the context is different, but it's the same process, and it's like finding the right person for this particular role and then seeing them run with the ball and seeing what they do and the excitement of that. That kind of a thing. And the kind of creative discussions as well. Like, okay, so we want the player to get this kind of reward for doing this, but how does that reward link into like the overall aim of the game? Those kind of gameplay discussions, that's a really similar thing, like building a game structure from the ground up. It's the same thing, just the context is a bit different.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, hey, Jamie, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to talk.
Yeah, and the game's coming out 2024. Do you have a tighter window than that?
We do not at the time being. We're still working on it, still figuring it out, but yeah, 2024 sometime.
Okay, the Plucky Squire. Look out for it, everybody. I'm very excited for it. But yeah, thanks again for your time, man.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. It was cool.
Absolutely. And thanks so much for watching or listening to this interview from MinnMax. You can find many more like it in this playlist on our YouTube channel. You can always subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That helps support us. Or again, you can help support this type of content directly at patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. You unlock the podcast version of all these interviews and a whole lot more. But all right, that's it. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it. You've seen the headlines. You know that the media landscape is consolidating. Having truly independent games media is more important than ever. MinnMax can exist independently as a place about games, friends, and getting better, but we need your help. The good news is that it's easy. Just click on that subscribe button or unlock a mountain of benefits by going to patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's. Thanks so much, everybody.